All right. I think that it's time to get started. So thanks everyone for being here, for stopping in. I hope that you appreciate the next couple of hours. My name is Leah Spinner. I'm one of the hub coordinators of Sunrise San Diego. I'm also a regional organizer for Sunrise National. And I'm super excited for you guys to hear and witness this interview. I think it was very powerful hearing from all of the Black environmentalists from San Diego. And yeah, I also want to pass it over to Riley to introduce our interpreters for the evening.
Hey, this is Riley. You'll be seeing ASL interpretation from Allison Hainsworth, and later on, Andrea Lust. Leah has a little bit of the video explaining how to do Spanish or listen to the Spanish translation stream. Unfortunately, we're having some technical difficulties with that, but we will be posting a Spanish translation as well as the full English interview later this week. So just keep an eye on our Instagram and we will point you to that. Thank you. Back to you, Leah.
Thank you, Riley. And thank you again to our interpreters. Thank you so much for being here. We love accessibility. So yeah, without further ado, let's begin the show. Yeah, so my name is Leah Spinner. I am a part of the Sunrise Movement, specifically the San Diego Hub, which is a youth climate justice movement that champions the Green New Deal as a means to achieve collective liberation. And I really appreciate you all being here on this panel. And this live stream is called Imagining Environmental Justice While Black. Because I think we all know that like the hashtag While Black has been alluded to people who are just doing like, you know, normal everyday things like walking or jogging in their neighborhood or a neighborhood like Trayvon Martin or Ahmaud Arbery, or like sleeping in your own bed like Breonna Taylor. And it's like all these normal situations have seemingly got these Black people like unjustly murdered while they're just being their Black ass selves. So I wanted to create this space for imagining like environmental justice for more of like a hopeful space, more of something that we can, you know, not be like kind of somber about, but more like, I'm in this, I'm Black, and I can actually do good things in my Blackness and in this space. So that's where the name came from, and that's why you all are here. And yeah, so thank you all for being here. And I was gonna do like a quick go around of everyone's name, but I think it would be even better if you guys were to like, yeah, name yourselves, give some like a quick like blurb about what you're a part of and like what you do. And then like also I was thinking of a really quick, like fun relational question, which is like, what is like your comfort food that you like? I know for me, I personally have been very much enjoying comfort food. I use like my meal, but it did something worked. And so like now when I get in a slump, I like resort to breakfast food. So that's like a comfort food of mine. Yeah, and I guess we can start. I want to start with Sister Maria. How about you go first?
Okay, so I am Sister Maria. I'm with the San Diego Urban Sustainability Coalition as the VP of Outreach and Programs. And I'm also the CEO of I Am Green. And I Am Green is a social enterprise whose sole mission is to reconnect our people back to the planet and each other. And my favorite comfort food would be something that makes me feel all gooey inside. I would have to say dessert. Like, I can live on dessert. I don't need regular food. Like, I could just eat cake, literally, and be just satisfied. So I would have to say some kind of cake with chocolate and Cool Whip and some strawberries or something. Like that, that's my ticket.
Sonja, how about you?
Hi, Leah. I want to say thank you. You're doing a marvelous job hosting this. And I want to give props just to Sunrise in general. You guys are great as an organization and really, I believe, embody where environmental justice does intersect with our racial, social, economic justice and equity. So I just want to give the shout out. It's been splendid for me to work with many different representatives of Sunrise. So Sonja Robinson, I'm definitely here representing Sustainable Urban Network. I have an internet radio show that we also do outreach as well as some local policy as well. And I also work with Protect Our Communities. And so currently we're working on initiatives that affects our energy. And so looking at our energy democracy and transitioning power, like not just figuratively, but literally. And so that's some of the work that I'm currently involved in. And this does involve our local policy. And so public policy. So I'm glad that's going to be something that we talk about. So I have to literally utter what Sister Maria said. So as soon as she said comfort food for me, the first thing I went to is sweets. So matter of fact, just yesterday I had a, very full and impactful week, both on a not so good side and on a very high note on yesterday. So one of the things I wanted to rush out to for that comfort, I just ran across this tiramisu cake at this grocery store. It's like this health food. I mean, I know health food grocery store, but it really is a like health food grocery store, but it has this tiramisu. And I tried it for the first time and it was so creamy and, the lady fingers. And I ran out to the store late, right before it closed, and it wasn't there. And I was like, so immediately following this, I'll be going back out there to see if they have restocked it so I can get my comfort. Thank you.
Yes, we love that for you. I hope that it's in stock so you can buy probably more than one. How about you, Rachel?
Yeah, thank you, Leah. So hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Hamilton. I am currently the Justice and Equity Intern for San Diego 350. But on my personal side, I also am the founder of my own mutual aid called CEAAL, which stands for Community, Environmental Justice, Abolition, Academia, and Liberation. And we are a group of college students and friends and family that just go out and do a lot of food justice initiatives for San Diego. So I love that work so much. But for my comfort food, I automatically went back to my Midwestern roots. And I was like, potatoes and cheese of some kind, some type of casserole. I know, and I don't eat it often, but I'm just like, that's what I go to. So that's my comfort food.
Yeah, potatoes you can do so much with them. So I agree with that. How about you, Paul? What do you got for us?
Okay, well, thank you. I'm so glad to be here and be a part of this. My name is Paul Watson. I'm the president and CEO of the Global Action Research Center in San Diego. We're a social change organization that's really designed to get the community voice into all decision-making areas that affect their lives. And one of the projects that we have is called the Ocean View Growing Grounds, which is located in Mountain View section of Southeast San Diego. And that one started out as a community garden and now has more transformed into an environmental justice learning hub. And that's also connected and partnered with the university at UCSD. And so let's see, in terms of comfort food, for me, it's basically traditional soul food. So give me a nice plate with some greens and some rice and beans and some chicken or maybe a little ham, some cornbread, and I'm in heaven. So that's me. Thanks.
Yes, can't go wrong with the cornbread. How about you, Diane?
Well, good morning. My name is Diane Moss, and I work with Project New Village. I'm the managing director there, and our primary focus is racial justice, looking at it through food justice and environmental justice lens. And I'm going to say today, my comfort food is anything cheesy, cheese. So I'm going to choose cheesy grits today as a comfort food.
Nice. My sister loves cheese. There's always cheese in the house. You can always count on it being there. So yeah, cheesy adds up. Very comforting.
Hi everyone, my name is Shakriya. I go by she, her, hers pronouns. And I started working in climate organizing when I was in about 9th grade, so last year. I'm a 10th grader right now. I just turned 16. I haven't been organizing for quite a while, but I just got back into being involved with like Sunrise and San Diego 350. I opened a chapter of US Youth Climate Strike here in San Diego. We're currently like not active because everyone's taking some sort of a break, but we helped organize the San Diego virtual climate strike that happened, the Earth Day climate strike that happened last year. It was an amazing event, and I'm so proud of everyone that was involved. And what was my favorite comfort food? I would say probably just cultural food. I'm from Somalia, so my mom, whenever she makes cultural food, it's kind of just like one of my favorite things ever. So yeah.
Nice, thank you. And I'm so glad that you could join us. And yeah, so glad that you are here so you can give us more of a perspective. Yeah, so thank you. Here's the first question. Just gonna jump right in there. So like growing up, when did you realize that doing environmental or climate justice work was important? And like as a follow-up, like what allowed you to like remain in an advocacy work? Could be a vision or could be like a mentor or something. And yeah, I know that we have like a very full set of panelists. So not everyone needs to answer the same question, but if you feel like you have a really good answer for these questions, feel free to answer them. And yeah, go. Whoever wants to go first can go.
I first realized my passion for climate organizing. I hope I'm answering the question correctly. But when I first realized that this is what I wanted to focus on during my, like, this was the first thing I ever got into when I started activism or when I started organizing within my community. So I realized through Youth Climate Strike, because that was the first organization I got into. And at the beginning, it was more of just, let me broaden my aspects, let me see where I can get involved in. But this was then after I learned more about climate change and how it affects specifically minority communities, I was like, okay, then this is a real issue that not a lot of people know about. And specifically So the Somali community, I know they don't know anything about climate change or what's going on or how using water bottle affects their community. So I was like, my passions and what I can do right now is educate our community. And that's what I've been doing. I started with my family. And now I'm like helping my aunt in her organization. I'm like trying to figure out ways that we can broaden and teach everyone else about what's going on.
So not to give too much time space with nothing being said, I guess I'll share my experience. I would say that my experience may be similar to just our Black population in general, in the fact that maybe how I was brought up, it was never framed that I was a conservationist, or it wasn't framed that I was an environmentalist or anything like that. My dad was in the military. And so even when we lived on base housing, we were still conservative and mindful of turning the lights off, right? Or, not keeping the refrigerator open, and, just things of conserving energy. And my aunt, one of my mom's sisters, she was really big about, if you littered anything around her, so I was brought up at a very young age, like that's just something you just don't do, and respecting. So our culture and our family, and even through my faith, was in being good stewards of the earth. And so I just remember how strong my aunt was with all of us, nieces and nephews and what have you. And so that really made us very more conscious to make sure that, we didn't litter, that we take that extra 5 minutes or whatever, and we put our trash, where it should be. So me personally, I grew up, so that was like some of my influences. But for me, as a person, I was all about repurposing for some reason. I can't say I got it from anyone else, but it was more innate. So like my mom was like, well, Sonja, you're done with this. I'm like, oh no, I can use this, or turn this upside down, and now I can use this candle holder. She goes, well, does it match? Yeah, but now I can use it for my bracelets. So I was all about like repurposing, reuse. And that was definitely, even to this day, I kind of irritate my son. Like, Mom, like, can we just throw this out? Like, I'm always trying to think of something else that I can reuse or repurpose. And again, this was just part of who I am. And I did not frame it as being an environmentalist. Like that wasn't, the language that was used in our culture. So I never knew that frame of it. I just knew that this was my lifestyle and this is what, what I do. So then when I worked for this global consulting firm, Accenture, they're, give them props. I was invited by a senior, so this is later on in life, as I kind of redirected my career, the senior partners of the firm, as well as senior management, invited me to be part of the Green team. And so when I joined the Green team, and understanding that environmental impacts impact our communities more than, the Caucasian counterparts, of course, I got more involved. Then eventually I became the editor-in-chief. And so even having to write out these newsletters every month, letting everyone know what they can do to preserve our energy, I just became more mindful, started adjusting my lifestyle. And then when I because I grew up out here, but then when I moved back to the San Diego area, I got more engaged and more involved in this when I ran as an assembly district delegate, and got involved and started working with other climate organizations in the area that just really fueled, I think, things that was in me, even dormant things as well, or just my regular lifestyle. So it wasn't necessarily like a pivotal moment, but it was like more or less things kind of like this all came together. And now I understand that as our work in environmental justice, to me, is like a remix of our civil rights movement, or another way in addressing our civil rights in our Black community from a different lens.
I wanted to jump on, or I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the correct term to transition. But Sonja's point of talking about just being raised to do these things. I think a lot of Black people, I think a lot of our culture, it is kind of in our culture to do a lot of environmentally friendly things. Like the reusing of our butter tins, you know, for like our country crock, you know, or that little cookie tin, that blue cookie tin for the sewing, you know, like, you know what I'm talking about. And when I grew up in Ohio, and out there it's much more the residential segregation is still very much there. So in Ohio has really bad climate in general. It's really extreme hot or cold. So you can see like the communities, like like physically, it's mainly the Black lower income communities that are experiencing these really intense climate things, climate catastrophes in general. But I think as a child, I didn't realize that I was experiencing environmental racism. I just attributed it to racism. And I mean, yes, it's a like an offshoot of it, but I didn't understand that it had an environmental aspect to it. So growing up, I thought it was normal that these disparities that my family was facing was because we're Black, and not just because of like systems that have created these outcomes of like food injustice or food apartheids or just like I feel like, sorry, I'm like a million words a minute going up in my head. But yeah, I just wanted to bring up to the fact that like I grew up doing a lot of these things because I didn't realize that we were lower income Black family, you know, so we're reusing our bottles, we're reusing our plastic bags and all these things that I had no idea were not the normal for everyone, for all ethnic groups and communities. But it was when I moved out here to San Diego in like 2018, I got introduced to the youth climate strike. I actually did that my senior year. And I had no idea that people would talk about climate in a sense without bringing up the racial disparities, if that made sense. Like there was just a lack of Black voices. And I'm especially coming from a place where I was experiencing all these things of like environmental injustice, economic injustice, like all these things. And that wasn't being brought into a conversation when we're talking about climate injustice was just so baffling to me. And I think that really activated me because beforehand I had done a lot of racial justice work, but I was like, there needs to be people doing this. And there are, but I just, at that time, I was like, I'm not seeing anything. So I need to make sure my voice is heard in that. So that really activated me, just knowing that Black communities and Black experiences were not being represented properly. I really wanted to do my part in that push and make sure that the climate movement was intersectional. It was addressing racial disparity, economic, just everything. So that's what really activated me and made me want to continue this work that I'm doing now. And I'm so happy that I am growing and learning, and I want to continue to grow and learn. So yeah, I'm just really excited to continue doing this work and to continue learning from all of you leaders in this space. So.
I want to follow up on the growing and learning because for me, it was also, it was really an evolution over time as I think about it. Because when I think back to when I was a child, I grew up in Long Island, New York. And at that time, it was very rural and our family was very, very poor. And so basically we grew our own food. And then we also did a lot of fishing because we were right there by the water. So the seafood and our growing for food was the way that we sustained ourselves. Now, as a child, my parents really didn't teach me things about soil or the air or the water. They were just chores that I had to do, you know, so I wasn't really happy about it, but we did it. But what I learned as I reflected back on this later on was the importance of having good soil, clean soil, uncontaminated soil. The oceans that were not contaminated, so the food that we were eating would actually be healthy and inspiring for us. So that was really a kind of a foundation for me. About 20 years ago, I went out to New York to visit a friend of mine, Luis Gardner-Costa, who was one of the founders of the Young Lords when I was working with the Panther Party. And so Luis has started a project, a community organization that's working with youth organizing in the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn. And so when I went out to visit them, the young people were in the middle of a environmental justice campaign. They had really done their research and found that the city was using, setting up most of their transfer centers or the dumps in their community. There was even a radioactive waste storage place in their community as well. This is all in New York. And so because it was primarily Puerto Rican community, they felt they could get away with doing that. And so it's probably, some of you know, New York is very segregated. It's by neighborhoods and ethnicities. And so to the north of them, there was a Hasidic Jewish community. To the south of them was a Polish community. And so what happened was that the young people called themselves the Toxic Avengers. And they went out and organized. They went into those other communities and helped them to understand that if there was an environmental catastrophe, it wasn't just going to be the Puerto Rican community, it was going to be the whole community. And so when they were able to unite everybody, they were then able to really fight the city and really get that stuff removed from their community. So that was the first time that from a social activist I was in the middle of a campaign and understanding what needed to happen. And then about 2 years ago, I was hired by the Climate Action Campaign here in San Diego to facilitate the development of the Green New Deal, San Diego Green New Deal aspect to that. And that was an interesting piece because there were about 140 participants. But what struck me was the small percentage of people of color and the small percentage of young people was there. And so that experience helped and make the environmental aspect a more significant part of our social justice efforts. And so that led me into moving into it. So for me, it was a slower kind of evolution. It wasn't really something that just jumped at me right away.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Sister Maria, I know you hopped off mute before, if you wanted to say anything or add to this part, or.
Oh, no, love. I'm sorry. I didn't know I did that. My apologies.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that people who want to say something about this question have space and time to talk about it.
My experience is much like everyone else's. No, don't worry.
And yeah, Diane, if you want to add anything, you're welcome to as well.
I'm going to agree. Mostly like the experiences here. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, and then coming to San Diego, the first thing I noticed in terms of climate is the air would change and the quality of, you could see it go from, I guess, what was normal to brown in the LA area. And I'm a social activist from the 70s, right? So I'm informed by the work by Robert Bullard and other people of color working on social justice issues, and in particular, the environmental issue and coming up with the principles of environmental justice. So it became another lens in which to do the work. I became an advocate or working in the food industry, right? Food justice industry in 2008. And you can't really work on food without working with the environment in which it's grown or created.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, thank you everyone for sharing. Yeah, I know I personally grew up low income, so that impacted my ability to do the work or even know that there was work that needed to be done. I very much agree, I think, with Sonja and the fact that I've done sustainable action just because my family needed to basically save money. But these are things that people would say that are sustainable, like saving this or saving that and repurposing them for something else. But it's in fact, this is a lot of Black and brown people's lives already. So yeah, very much agree with that. And thank you all for sharing. Yeah, wanting to know like where in your work do you see like the intersections of race and climate justice like playing out explicitly?
The way that I see it, if your feet touch the planet, you're involved, right? And so that's it, right? And so when I speak to our community and I speak to other community-based organizations that aren't necessarily in this space, that is my approach. You may think that you're not in this space, but if you live on planet Earth, you are definitely in this fight because you're being affected. Whether you decide to call yourself an environmentalist or an activist or climate champion, you're being negatively impacted if you live where I live, if you live with other people who look like me live. So you might as well have a say in it. And you might as well educate and become educated on how this affects criminality, how this affects the same things that people take for granted. Like Sister Sonja was saying, like, you don't have to think about going for walks because nobody's harassing you. Nobody's arresting you for just wild black, right? You don't have to worry about transportation and riding the trolley because nobody's arresting you when you ride the trolley or harass you or give you tickets that you can barely afford because you may not have the money to pay for the ticket, right? And so there are different things that some people simply do not have to think about because it's not, they're disconnected, like Sister Sonja was saying. So for me to make the connection and to involve other community-based organizations that who don't recognize the intersection or don't recognize is to show them, this is how you connect. The environment, if you look at children who have poor air quality, who do not have access to decent whole foods, who are not safe in their communities, their grades are affected, their attendance in school is affected, which leads to not being in school, being in places where you don't belong, being in the wrong place at the wrong time that may introduce you to the criminal injustice system. So it's all back to the planet. It all begins with this space. And so we can't escape it. And so the best thing I think that we can do is educate our community, help our community identify sustainable practices, like everybody has already mentioned, that we have all done because it's a part of our ancestry. We did not make it a trend. We did not label it because we just call it common sense. So no, we're not going around naming things and trying to make it, trend on Twitter because you're not going to throw away that plastic bag. You're going to reuse it for something else because that's what your ma dear did. That's what her ma dear did. And that's what we do, right? And so I just think that when we get rid of that vocabulary and help people identify that we're already green and that we're already sustainable and just learn how to kick it up a notch and perhaps educate them with some of this vocabulary that was meant to keep us out in the first place, that was meant to alienate us and make us feel like we don't have a place because it's been whitewashed. That's when we can come and have real conversations and show the intersectionality between all the fights that we find ourselves in.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I was like, how many bags do I have under the cabinet right now? How many tubs of ice cream that I have saved for other things that I can reuse for? Yes, there may not have always been the vocabulary for it, but we have been doing these things for years. And they have been passed down through generations. So yeah, I very much agree. And yeah, I'm wondering also from Rachel or Shakria, from a youth perspective, how are you guys feeling about this question of where does race and climate justice intersect? And then what do you think that what would it take for like to support the youth in uplifting these kind of things?
Yeah, definitely. So I think when I talk about climate justice, what I've been making sure to in the language of it, I try to make sure that when I'm talking about environmental justice, I'm talking about environmental justice that is not intersectional. So when I say climate justice, I mean true climate justice. That's intersectional with race, economic, class, like all of that. So I try not to separate race and climate. That's just like I'm just sharing that because I feel like that's how we start to once we separate it, it allows us to not pay attention to something. So I just wanted to start with that. But my job right now, actually, with the org that I'm with, that I'm working at, is to kind of create this understanding of intersectional climate justice. And one of the first things that I always bring to people's attention is that we can't have a people building movement without people. So if Black people are dying in the street, or Black people or like BIPOC people in general are being killed off by climate injustice, like you can't have a huge movement that's fighting for the earth if we're letting our people die. Do you know what I mean? So when we think about it in that sense, it allows us to really not take a moment, but for the people who did not understand the true intersectionality of climate justice, it really is a very blunt way of being like, it's not a small issue on its side. It's not isolated. So from a youth perspective, I think I think it's really important that we understand the impacts that environmental injustice has on Black children, Black youth, especially. I'm just thinking about my own childhood, and just extreme heat, extreme weather, like even the transportation injustice that Sister Maria was talking about, wondering if I'm walking home from the bus stop, if I'm gonna be like yelled at by a police officer, like these are things that start to affect children's mental and psyche. And that's also a big aspect that a lot of people don't understand when it comes to activism and climate activism, especially for Black youth. We have a lot to think about. We have a lot to worry about. So when we start to like, oh, you don't care about this, or you don't care about like, and this is just an example, like let's say you're not organizing around the Green New Deal right now at this very moment. Shame on you, but this Black kid is low income. They're already doing a bunch of sustainable things, So I think we really have to, for Black youth, start to revamp the language around environmental. I'm not saying anything new. We've all been saying this exact same things, but really revamp the language. And I think Sister Maria is literally the perfect person for this, like teaching everyone that they are already doing this work and how can they elevate themselves. And I just want to take this moment to say that Sister Maria, you are the work that we're talking about right now. You are doing that for this community. You're absolutely amazing. And I love you so much. And just having more people doing this work for students, especially Black students, and just being there and supporting them and understanding that even though they might not have the language and like knowledge of environmental work, they are still trying, and it's best to meet them where they're at and then build them up. So I think, that's what I would say for Black youth. And then Sister Maria, you're amazing. Love you.
Basically, I agree with everything that Rachel said. I don't think anything I can say can top that. But I just want to say that a lot of climate organizations right now, like specifically like US Youth Climate Strike and some other like small youth organizations nationally, it's mostly the organizers in these organizations are white, and they don't understand that when a black organizer comes into the space, that they're supposed to not like be like, oh, you don't know about this, you don't know leftism, you don't know theory, you don't know this. I'm like, hold up, okay, like you were probably provided with that knowledge and with that space to be able to learn that information. However, me as a Black student, I just came here because I see how it's affecting my community. I don't know much about like the terms and all of that. So exactly what Rachel said, being able to meet Black students where they're at right now and be able to educate them from there and not kind of belittle their experience.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. I think one of the biggest things that is like, yeah, for me being a Black environmentalist and coming into this with like lived experience, I'm like, okay, yeah, I am also a scientist and I have like knowledge about, you know, atmospheric chemistry and how the climate actually works from like a scientific perspective. But I also was a poor Black kid who has lived experience and understand how that side of it works. And so I'm like, you know, one of these things are not being equated equally here. And so when my Black self enters a space, I want you to know that, you know, I'm talking from my lived experience. And this is what I would need as a Black poor person to be able to do the work of uplifting environmental and climate justice. And not just what I know scientifically, right? So yeah, I really agree with that point that you said, Shukri. And yeah, I think maybe Rachel, you wanted to say something else?
Yes.
But, okay.
I'll be really quick. I'll be really, really quick. And I think that conversation of lived experience versus the scientific, I think, especially in the realm that we're all in, where it's not majority marginalized people that are speaking on platforms, it really, that's a really big challenge, is because we are all speaking from lived experience. And I think we have to remember, you can't be the people that are a large cause of these problems cannot be the saviors for it as well. And I think we need to start making sure that we look towards the people that are most affected by the climate, by climate catastrophe. We need to look at our communities as leaders and look to them for the answers, not to the people who cause it. So I just wanted that might be controversial, but I'm just throwing it out there.
No, yeah, so like hot take or whatever, but definitely necessary to be said, right? And so, yeah, thank you all for that. I know that like, yeah, we're running very short on time, but I also want to make space for this other section that deals more with like policy and stuff. I'm gonna take this facilitator luxury and say that we can have like a 5-minute break. We can meet back on 12, and then I will come back to ask the other more politically inclined questions. So just making sure that we all have time for that and it's okay to go over 12. Okay, thank you all very much. See you back at 12.
All these folks would be like me. They don't really want to be like me. Cause I'm true to me. It's not just a friend that you like. Truth is that you think that I really want better. Damn, now I'm expected cause you said I like it when you talk like this. In this bed, I'm alive. The world, tonight, I'm alive. Sorry, I'm too much. But after this, you're mine. I'm alive. You know why? I'm alive. I'm alive. Your eyes, alive. Turn to get attention for the genocide and bushes. The world's been crying. can't see it, I can't feel it, I can hear it through the streets, through the voices of the homeless. I've been chosen when I've been for this discussion. I've been lucky, I've been blessed. I never stressed about money, it's not because they for the such living. Didn't know that all this would be mine. So I get back when it's time and on the stage. I'm like, I can choose the world, I can choose the lives. I'm like, something I'm not much. After this, can I look in my eyes? I'm like, I'm like, I'm like, it's time. Your eyes, like that. Like that.
That was the first half of the question. So now I want to like go into the more like legislative questions. So here's the first one. In your opinion, what legislation or like policy wins do you think that we should be seeking in order to secure a livable future for generations to come? And it could be speaking in the local context or nationally, whatever one you're most familiar with.
I could start. There's a bill before the House of Representatives on reparations that I think is actually going to get some traction this time. And while we think about that, I want to make sure that within those discussions of what to do and how to really provide redress for Black people, that we also are thinking about environmental aspects of that. And what I mean by that is this, that research shows that your zip code is also a determinant in terms of your longevity. And that even in a study that we did here in San Diego, just north of 8, it's a difference of like 5 to 10 years in longevity expectation. And so when we get into the issue of how to really provide redress for Black people, we talk a lot about the economic determinants, the social determinants, but we very little discussion about the environmental determinants. And so as we're starting to talk about housing and what we need to do about that, we need to also make sure that the land that we're going to be putting our people in is clean and healthy and can sustain us. The air, the water, we can't go through another thing like Flint. And who else knows what these things are going on? So my point about it is that our voices need to be raised about the environmental impacts that have harmed our communities for such a long time. And when we want to have an opportunity to really start to address that, we've got to make sure that that's included the same way as our education and our health and every other aspect of it. So that's just one thought that I have.
I'm not much of a, because I did get a chance to look at the questions. And of course, when I saw the policy, I immediately thought of Sister Sonja, because I'm like, yeah, that's right up her alley, right? Because I think that is along the lines of looking for the people who cause the problem, to be looking for them to give us a solution. Many of our organizations are funded to fail. Like, we're given just enough resources to go nowhere fast. So my belief system believes that we should pool our resources within our own community And for those who want to work on policy, send me the letter, I'll sign it. Like if I trust your judgment and I know, like if it's Sister Sonja, you know, or some other community-based organizations that I trust, then yeah, okay, if you explain it and I feel like I'm down with that, sure, you got my support. But I'm personally, in my organization, I Am Green, we're not looking to the political system to solve our problems. We're not looking for policy because we have policies. We have bills, we've had laws, and they skirt right around those laws, they skirt right around those policies, they skirt right around everything they want to skirt around in order to justify the systemic oppression. The policies are actually the systemic oppression. So for me, policy is great. If that's your avenue, I'm your girl, I'm gonna support you. But for me, I feel like the answer is in our collective. The answer is in each other. I've seen it work when I was growing up and we all would meet and our grandmothers would grow their own food like Brother Paul talked about. And we would meet at the fences and barter with one another. You take the collards, you take this, you take that. And it was the collective that saved us. It was the collective that saved us in slavery. It was the collective that saved us in Jim Crow. It was the collective, the Black church, all of us working together. It was the collective that saved us, you know, in the sundown towns, in the places you have to go with the green books and everything else. So I feel like our answer is ourselves. We're only going to save ourselves. We've seen it historically. We see it presently. If we keep looking for the same people that put you in a predicament, then I don't know how you expect to get out of it. We have enough resources. We have enough spending power. We have enough intellectual resources to answer our own questions. So I think if we reframe some of what we have been taught through anti-Blackness, through white supremacist ideology, and really start to look at ourselves as the brilliant people that we are, the brilliant people that help make this country the most highly regarded country on the planet, it was us. That was our sweat equity. That was our blood. That was us, right? We're a major component to that. So I just wish that a part of the policy, that's great, like I said, but if we would just look back to the collective and understand that we are the answers to our own problem, and if we work together, we can do it, then that would be a great step in the right direction for me personally. Oh yeah, and reparations. We will take that reparations though. Just want to put that out. Yes, there are climate reparations and environmental reparations, absolutely.
Yes, I definitely agree with everything that has been said. But I also want to also go off the collective and wondering if anyone in this space has any thoughts on what the collective in terms of the Black community, in terms of a societal shift, what we can do as a collective to start getting our Black community to start getting more into the political sphere and policy of it. And I know Sonja, you were called out as someone who would be able to speak on this, and wondering your thoughts and also wondering other people's thoughts about that.
So yeah, I definitely do believe that, I had different beliefs, but where I'm at right now is that when we look at I think that people definitely should shape our policy, right? So I have this people power policy, and I feel like our involvement with policy can definitely have a better outcome of how things impact our everyday lives. So I don't see our collective power separate necessarily to the policy that's needed to move us further in the space of justice, or to reclaim justice that should rightfully be part of us. It's just unfortunately, I've had to reflect on some newfound awareness that wherever I was living and in my space, I didn't always I didn't see it the way I see it now. What took place, I think even, most recently and under this previous administration, just kind of reminded us that even though we're past Jim Crow, this mindset still exists, right? And even though we're past slavery to some definition, right? Because we can argue, if we really are past that or not, but this mindset still exists in other people, right? That really feel as though that they, and so for me, like I've had to personally kind of reconcile that I really believe that we were further along as just a race of people from a humanity perspective, and not necessarily getting it all segmented into race. So I had to take a step back and reconcile, like, oh, we may not have been, actually in a lot of senses, I think we're in a worse predicament now. When we look at our systemic, policies and things of that nature and how they've been carried out in the most recent generations, like the baby boomer generations, and as where we're at now, I think in some regards that we're probably in a worse predicament than we were in those generations where Blacks can only enter your house from the back and not from the front. And so you gotta understand, like, there's some revelations that I've been able having to reconcile in my observations and understanding as far as where we're at now, because as far as America goes, if there's anything we want to do, if there's anything we want to accomplish, we get it done. That's kind of been the theme of, where United States of America's posture has been in the world, right? So if we really wanted to accept all races as being equals in the space of humanity, then to me, it would have already been done, right? Like, so when you have all these boards, all these organizations and corporations and all these board members, there will be representations of, every, beautiful, humane race of people that represent our population as a whole. So I say that to say that, I've had to, just kind of be in more disclosure, I've had to recognize that in a lot of ways we're, in a worse predicament than we are, but I have a lot of hope yet and still where we're at and where our youth is at. So the representations of Rachal and Shakira and my son, he's part of this generation, right? And Alex and so many others, and you, Leah, like, I really have a lot of hope, but yet still some disappointment. Like, what happened to my generation? What happened to the generation before this? What happened to the generations that has been, really reinforcing, this oppression and reinforcing, this painful lived experience for people that look like me, right? So, but I also believe that from a policy perspective, so I just share that just to understand that I do believe that policy can work from the people. I do believe that as we are more engaged, our voices are heard, that we show up, that is what helps shape the policies that can impact our lives. So I didn't always necessarily see it that way, but I definitely see it like that today. And I really believe it can work. I feel like it's a lot of work for it to work. And I think that it takes people to believe in the hope of the change, that it takes people willing, as Sister Maria said, that she is willing to sign off letters, and she has, and I appreciate that, sis. Like, even though she may have a different position and a different posture, and I respect her posture, but yet I do believe that, when we find the qualified candidates, when we get behind those that are actually doing the work to help save us and our communities that represent us, such as our council member, Monica Montgomery Stepp. She is a voice for the people. She is a people's council person. And so to me, part of what I feel that I take responsibility is trying to help her and help our communities in the district to help push things in the right direction and help get the outcomes that we're looking for. So I believe the more of us that are involved with our politics, with policy, that it can literally have a more lasting positive impact in our lives. So I definitely encourage people to get involved if you feel like you have that posture or you have the grace to work in that space, that I think it could benefit us.
Yeah, I think that's really right. Especially in the sense that, like, even though we have, I think, all expressed some kind of shared, like, collective experience that as like Black people, we may have been doing the sustainable things that like individuals should be doing. But there's more than that, right? It's like a political sense to it, right? And yeah, I hear you, Sonja, just like saying that like we should get more into that as Black people, as people of color, even just getting into being more aware of like how we can affect that. And so I'm wondering if you all have heard about the Green New Deal. Yeah, and so like I know that Sunrise is like a big champion of the Green New Deal, especially like electing people who believe in it to endorse them to be like our political leaders, such that like the Green New Deal would bring about like policies and legislation aimed to tackle the climate crisis, which affects all of us, especially Black and Brown people, to be able to like move forth through the transition of like climate change and like jobs and everything necessary to have a more sustainable, like regenerative future. And that's the Green New Deal aims to do all of that, rooted in like equity in terms of like racial equality and like class equality. So I'm wondering like what you all think about what a Green New Deal could do for our community. Like the Black community, and also specifically for San Diegans.
Well,
go
ahead, Rachel, I'm sorry.
Okay, it's just really quick. But I just wanted to say that I am trying to become more familiar with the Green New Deal. And I just wanted to share that I'm actually reading the book right now, Winning the Green New Deal, because I feel like I've been doing a lot of, I have a similar sentiment towards policy work as Sister Maria was talking about earlier, but I understand that I need to at least understand it and know it. So I really want to start looking into the Green New Deal and seeing how that can affect the San Diego population and how I can do my part in that fight. Sorry, but thank you so much, Paul, for letting me go.
Okay, no problem. When I was talking earlier about facilitating those 140 environmental activists to really look at the Green New Deal, because the Green New Deal is a framework of thinking. It doesn't really give you the specifics in regard to what has to happen locally. And so our thinking was then that, each locality needs to come together, take that framework of thinking, and then say, how did that apply? In this case, it was to San Diego. And at the end of that process, we took about 4 months in the summer to do that. And I thought that the end result of that plan was a good plan that would benefit everybody. However, because there was such a small number of people of color, particularly Black folks and young people, what you don't get is the nuances of the things that have affected us and our communities for such a long time. And so that's really why I feel that we've got to get our voices into these tables and really begin to broaden this out a little bit more. Because by the same token, you know, the folks that were in the room were not against really including the needs of Black folks. But because there's no Black folks speaking to that, they're not thinking about that. And so they're thinking about more of the mainstream kinds of things. And again, I said we would benefit somewhat to that, but it doesn't really address our needs. So the work that each of you are doing, it really becomes such very important because you've got to get more voices to the table, starting with helping people to understand the importance of this, how it affects us, you know, and then also begin to get creative about how we disseminate that information within our communities. We have a project now that we just started called the Young Environmental Activist Project. And so we're taking both middle school, high school, and university youth together. And so we put them through a training program to really talk about, to break down the science and all those things in ways that they can understand it and work through it. But then having them become the advocates that will go out into the community and really be able to share this. And so what we're focusing on is they're going to use creative arts as a way of also being able to share it. So there'll be murals and they'll do presentations, they'll do rap songs, whatever kinds of things that they do to, and the audience that we're trying to get them to focus on is their peers, of course, also their parents, bringing that back home into their families, and then into the broader communities, into various nonprofits and all those kinds of things. But I think it's to me, I always think about it this way. There's two types of power that have really structured the Black experience here in this country. There's money, which has usually been the power that's been used against us. And then there's people power. And that's usually, you see that through the civil rights movement and all the efforts that we got going. So if we come down on the people power, that means that the only way we can really change things is through numbers. We've got to reach as many people as possible. And the only way we can do that is through a lot of smaller individual efforts that ways, and that's why I talk about all of us collectively doing our part. We're working at it from our perspective, but really doing the same thing of educating people and building the platform by which they could really be able to speak out and engage other folks. When it comes to climate change, we've got the science to fix this. We just don't have the political will because of the big corporations that have continued to really try to pay off other legislators to say that it doesn't exist, right? And so to me, the only way to address that is we've got to not go to them to do it, but we've got to go to the people and have the people demand that these folks represent their interests. And if they don't, we got to get rid of them. But that's to me is where the people power has got to be our focus. And we've got to really begin to educate people to help them to build the platforms to really be able to get that message out in whatever way that we can. And really begin to say that our environment is as important as all of those other issues. Because if we solve all the social issues and we don't address the environment, we're all going to die anyhow. And so, you know, we gotta tie it all together. So anyhow, I'll shut up now.
Thank you, Brother Paul. Can I just say this? Thank you, Brother Paul. You know, I was there when you were facilitating the Green New Deal. I was probably the third Black person in the room with yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And what was a part of the process is our voices, even through that process, if you're not used to interacting with Black people, if you're not used to taking or believing that Black people are smart enough, or you're not used to Black authority, right? Or being an authority on something or being an expert, we can have all the voices in the world if nobody's listening. Yeah. So even through that experience, we noticed that we were being silenced. Mm-hmm. We had young people at the table, but the older people that were there weren't listening to them.
Yeah.
We had Black people at the table and, you know, BIPOC people at the table, but we were being silenced. So it takes a certain kind of education on anti-Blackness. And it's not intentional. This is the system that we all grew up in. Yeah. It's not making people bad people. It is fact. This is, you are taught, you were trained, you were indoctrinated that Black people don't matter. Black voices don't matter. So we're all sitting around. I think Brother Tamboozy was the other Black person there. And we're all sitting around talking and being completely ignored. So we ended up having to have a whole nother meeting at the Malcolm X Library. So that the Black voices, if you remember, so that the Black voices could be heard because it was recognized, and the organizers of the San Diego Green New Deal dealt with it like they did not mess around. When we were expressing ourselves like, hey, they was like, okay, we're gonna do something about it. And that is what it takes. Our voices have to be heard. That anti-Blackness has to be talked about, it has to be dealt with, it has to be eradicated. Because if you can institutionalize hate, you can institutionalize love. And so if you can't come from that perspective, listen, like we have to show up and we have to know what we're talking about and not be surveyed to damn death about stuff that we don't even know what to answer to. You asking me questions, I don't know what I'm gonna answer because I haven't been truly educated on what to say. And so it's just a lot of things that are being done that are just ticking the boxes. Yeah, we want you to show up. Yeah, we want your voice, but it's just boxes. I feel the whole type of way about that. But my point is, the voices are good. The people power is good. It's all a part of the collective, but people really have to be taught how to listen to Black voices and take direction from Black people.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. That's really real. And like even, like definitely, Diane, I'm definitely about to get to you. I definitely want to hear you. I just want to say that like, yes, it's so real hearing like people who want to hear like from Black people and like from Black experiences, but then them that like not understanding how to absorb and like internalizing that information. It's like, I'm not just speaking because I want to, like I'm speaking from like my experience and common sense. Like I know this works. Like I know you want to have a cross-class multiracial movement, but you're not going to get that without actually like implementing like the experiences from the people that you're trying to organize. And I'm like, yeah, so thank you, Sister Maria, for adding that. And yes, Diane, please give us what you got on this.
But I just want to say, we come from a history of doing things in a cooperative fashion. Most of the times when we move, Black people move forward. It's not because we have all of the assets that we need. It's because we're smart people. We're people who work together to be resistant to that which is foolish. And we have to always be in the position of teaching. No one can show people how to interact with us better than we can. So that's like a inherited role that we have to take in order to have justice and to be included and for our voice to be taken seriously. We have to speak loud, we have to speak consistently and work with others as we can. And we're in a teacher role there because no one can do that but us on any social justice. Racism is a part of the DNA of America, right? It's in every aspect of how we live. So it's for us to take up the leadership, to be our own involved in solutions that work for us. We cannot advocate give that role to anyone else. We have to step up and do that in the way that we can and in the way that our ancestors have shown us how to do it.
Yes, every time you say something, I'm like, period. That's it. Nothing else needs to be said.
Well, I'm a listener and hopefully relaying those things that have been taught to me, right? That's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, like I very much appreciate it. And I'm like, wow, I'm personally like really enjoying this space. It has been like, just so like, I don't know, I want to say like therapeutic to like get to listen to other Black voices, especially in the local area that I live in, and who feel similar ways about how to get things done, like very much in agreement. And then I also want to hear from Shukriya, some of our younger panelists, and just seeing like, what does the youth need to hear to be able to start doing that kind of like legislative or more like policy-based work, so that we can like start implementing our opinions into like what's being implemented into our society.
Sorry. I was basically going to say that I remember Paul saying that he's currently working through a training with youth students or with young people in general, just to educate them on the Green New Deal or policy work and in general. And I think that's really important because as a 16-year-old, I sometimes I'm like confused on like what exactly people are talking about when they like mention bigger terms when it comes to policy. I'm just like, I don't know what that means. I have to go search it up, and I'm like, okay. But I want to be able to get that training and be able to learn more about it, so then therefore I can communicate that when I'm doing my organizing or when I'm working with others. So I think just education, trainings, like Paul said, and also remembering that younger people are not as educated in terms of policy. So be able to exactly like meet them halfway, tell them, okay, this is what we mean by that, so then they can be able to communicate with you in a mature conversation.
Yeah, sorry, I mean, just to share like context on my perspective, I just turned 20 yesterday, actually. So like my age group, we all kind of grew up in high school, late middle school, watching the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement. So like we were there and old enough to comprehend, old enough to comprehend like the Trayvon Martin murder, like all of these things, seeing Eric Garner, seeing like just Philando Castile, like just growing up, seeing all of that. And I think a lot of us are just frustrated. And I think a lot of us find it hard to want to get into policy work because we feel like it maybe doesn't have an immediate action. So I think the best way to get a lot of Black youth, and I'm talking about myself as well, because I still have a lot of like angst against policy work because and I'm trying to grow out of it and try to learn and understand. But it's because I just want something to be done now. I want it to be fixed. I want us to have justice. I can just be so frustrated. And I think a lot of us would benefit from having a movement that doesn't just say one is better than the other. I think it would work better it would reach more people if we allowed there to be room for direct action of like marching in the streets, tearing stuff up. I almost cursed, sorry. Tearing stuff up, but also having those people be educated and know that, yes, we can tear stuff up, but we got to have policy work for after this moment of passion is done. What are we going to implement later on? And I think that's where we're trying to figure it out now. And I think Sunrise is really great at, especially being a youth movement that is working on policy already. Like you all are doing the dang thing when it comes to policy. So I think we just need to find that bridge that gap between the two and find a way to get people who would normally be on one side or the other work together. Yeah. And then sorry, I was reading the comment, but yeah, find a way to gap it together. And I figure like that will bring a lot more people into the movements and not treating policy as if it's more elite. Like I think there's a lot of elitism when it comes to the conversation between policy and like action. So just kind of erasing that narrative and just understanding that they're both necessary and that we can work together to do that work. So.
Can I say that advocacy work should drive policy work and not the other way around? Policy is public. That's what we're going to be told that we should do. We should inform that. It shouldn't inform us. We should make it it's supposed to be a democracy, right? I'm just saying.
Yeah, exactly right.
Absolutely. Yes.
And there's just one
Yeah.
other thing, if I can just share something else, is that you have like high propensity voters, low propensity voters. And as what, Ms. Moss just said, and thank you for sharing that if you're not involved and you're not engaged, and those that are in authority realize that you're not, then unfortunately, that's just how it's designed now. I think we could probably reconstruct it. I mean, it'd be a big lift, but they're not going to hear you, right? So, but if you're involved and you're engaged, and then they will hear you. So that's where that advocacy can definitely influence, as Ms. Moss says, it's our policy. So there's aspects of this that I understand that it seems like it's so disconnected. And I cannot say that I haven't always been there, but I also see that if we're not involved and we're not there, and if we are showing that our power, our people, our movement, and put that pressure on those that are in position to make those changes, it can happen. And so it may not be instant, but the advocacy work definitely is the people power to push us forward. So I would just encourage for us to be more involved in versus less involved, because I think us being less involved, we were able to see that many didn't vote, in 2016, and we see what happened, right? And then in this last, federal, election, with more people involved, more people engaged, and more people willing to take, even just take that leap of faith to vote, it turned things around in a positive way for us. So at least in the right direction.
Yeah. And thank you all for sharing. I've already mentioned, I'm definitely enjoying myself. This conversation has been more than enlightening. And I'm like, wow, can we save some time afterwards so we can just talk? But yeah, I also want to be respectful of you guys' time. So thank you for answering that question. And I just want to start moving into the closing. And basically for that, I just want to hear, I know you guys are all over different spectrums of where we can get engaged and who's doing the engaging and what areas you're affecting. So with that being said, just wanting to know where are you guys seeing that Black people, people of our community can get engaged for the future? Any words of encouragement that you would have? And then also kind of self-promotion, what do you have going on in your org that you would like to promote to others to get them involved with? So anyone can go.
I'm gonna say every week on Thursday, I got a garden. It's the Mount Hope Community Garden. And what we decided to do is to have eco-friendly food night. Our lane is food justice. So when you come that night, the local fishermen have put together fish dinners prepared by local chefs, and we give them out at the garden to people who need them. That's every Thursday. And additionally, we bring out a farm truck that comes from North County. These are small BIPOC farms that have grown food that we've connected, and they sell their food that night. So eco-friendly, being conscious that our values are where we are, what we're using, and our taste buds, if you will, for the food that we select and source. So we like to share that with the whole world, to come out and to enjoy the food, enjoy the notion of your values, being in touch with your choices, right? And do it right in the neighborhood in an urban green space. Thank you.
I would say for us, the thing that we in my organization have kind of carved out is the focus around education and kind of community mobilization. You know, as an educator, I think, and we talked about this too, knowledge is the basis for it. We gotta be able to make sure that our people know what's happening to them and know ways in which they can really be able to address those things. And also when I say education, it's not we talk about for us as a bidirectional learning process. So in other words, all knowledge doesn't resolve at a university. We have knowledge within the community. People just being able to survive is techniques and things that we all can learn from. So we've got to be able to establish ways in which we can learn from each other, take the science and the technology, but bring that into the community in an honorable and respectful way, and have the community lead in terms of how they identify what the problems are and then working through with the solutions. So we're trying to set up at the Ocean View Growing Grounds as a learning center that has stations that really educate people about the things that people can do in terms of building that whole political crowd. When you think about climate change, there's so much there that you can think about, but what we're focusing on is what we call nature-based climate solutions, like planting trees, having gardening, rainwater harvesting, or gardens on their patio and balconies, so because our feeling is the more that we can get people engaged, get their fingers into the soil and all that, the more committed they will be to really pushing the environmental ideas that they have. And then our primary focus about how to market all of this is for the young people. And bringing young people in, and by giving them the education and understanding that viewpoint that comes in, they can then become the advocates that then can push this out into the community. What we also are saying too, the environmental piece is the focus of it, but for all of those young people, they also need to have a public education, popular education piece. And that's the political, social, and economic constructs that have always been there that relate to Black folks. Because if you don't understand that, then you're just doing anything, and it doesn't, it may not get you to where you need to go. So I don't care what the focus is with us, anything that we work on, if it's recreation stuff, all the young people need to get that political, social, and economic understanding and framework in order to work through. So that's sort of what we've kind of carved out for ourselves, because that's our strength, and that's what we can do.
Yeah, thank you. Rachel, you wanted to go?
Yeah, thank you, Leah. So at San Diego 350, I'm doing a lot of anti-racist work with the organization. So we're doing a lot of efforts trying to bridge that gap between environmental justice and racial justice, to kind of create a culture-wide understanding of you can't, like climate justice, true climate justice, intersectional climate justice. So that's what I'm doing there. But the work that I really want to share with you all is CEAAL, which actually, so it's a BIPOC women-led org, but we focus all of our work for Black femmes in the San Diego area. So we are doing a clothing drive. So we're getting donations from people to make sure that we're not contributing to clothing waste or having people throw stuff out, and always making sure that it's good. But we're going to give that to queer Black femmes in the area. We're going to try to work with another org to distribute that work out. We continue doing our plant-based food distributions to the housing insecure in the area. And we're also really excited. We haven't had a date come up just yet, but we really want to have a symposium for a lot of Black femmes in San Diego of all groups and places. Oh, thank you, Sonja. Yeah, all groups and all places to just come into a space and heal. I think especially as a youth, a Black youth, and that is also, I don't experience anti-Blackness to the same as my dark skin peers. I really want to create a space for Black women from all, experiencing all isms, especially colorism, have a space to just heal and be themselves and be in a place with each other and just live, laugh, love. Sorry not to be corny, but like live, laugh, love, have a great time. So I'm really excited for that, and details will be coming out on our Instagram, which is at CEAAL, so at c.e.a.al. So yes, that's all I have, and thank you for having me on this panel today.
That sounds amazing, Rachel. I almost let my rap down talking about that. So what we're doing, of course, I'm here to represent the San Diego Urban Sustainability Coalition, as well as my organization, I Am Gree. So the San Diego Urban Sustainability Coalition is having another climate ambassador training where we teach our community about environmental justice, how to organize around environmental justice, and become community organizers and activists and servants, right? So that we can each one teach one, each one reach one. So that is the point of our Climate Ambassadors program. Mama Moss came from Project New Village, and she talked to our ambassadors about some of the things that they were doing over there so that the ambassadors can get involved with other organizations, so we don't have to recreate the wheel, so that we can support other organizations that are already doing the work, right? And so we still waiting on that that intimate dinner. Look, everybody was excited about that. That was a fan favorite. So that is one of the things that we're doing, and I Am Green is working on a climate equity task force. We hear equity it's the buzzword, and it sounds real great until you have to match dollar signs up to that equity, and then it's radio silence, right? And so I Am Green is working on building our climate equity task force so that we can make sure that it's not symbol without substance, as we have been historically left with a lot of talk and nothing to back it up. So be on the lookout for us doing our climate equity task force and getting the community involved, because we have to start with education. Like Brother Paul was saying, it is no way humanly possible to have an informed opinion about anything and you don't know what people are talking about. And so it's very important to us. That is a pillar for both organizations, both the San Diego Urban Sustainability Coalition and I Am Green, which is engaging our community with the education around climate justice and environmental literacy so that we can make the informed decisions that will change the trajectory of our lives. Thank you.
I don't have like any events or anything like that going on, but I just wanted to maybe like give some advice to maybe newcomers who want to get involved. Just like don't be afraid to contact people, although you might not know maybe the first steps towards organizing. There isn't really any first steps to get involved. The first steps, that's what I meant to put like quotes. Just get involved, learn from your peers, and don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone and be able to be involved in many different things. So then later on, you can find your real passion. Yeah, that's it.
Yes, I definitely agree with you completely as far as getting involved. That's definitely the first step, and I have done just that as well. So I'm the program manager at Protect Our Communities, and there's a lot of great things that we're working on. I'm also the executive producer for Sun Sustainable Urban Network. And so a lot of the work that I'm currently involved in is a resource that we all need, and that's energy. Energy is something that we all need, but we often, majority of us don't think about. You know, all we want to do is just hit the switch and the light comes on, not identifying the resource or the source of that energy. Was it clean energy? Is it, fossil fuel energy? Is this, polluting our air? So there's that direct causation, as far as the energy we use with the quality of our air is a direct, implication as far as the pollution that oftentimes we see in our neighborhoods that are more populated with our BIPOC communities. So there's different aspects, you know, in wanting to make sure that we are moving towards that future for our energy that starts now for clean, renewable energy, as far as divesting ourselves from fossil fuel that has harmed our lives in many different aspects. You know, we can go from a corporate greed aspect of it to, like I said, the pollution in our air. And so knowing that the air quality, oftentimes, as it was mentioned on this panel, in San Diego can be so very low, right? And you can even see the pollutions, and knowing that that pollution also is whether it's a causation, but it's definitely it's related, correlated, that's the word I'm looking for, to our respiratory, right? It affects, you know, oftentimes they say that more children of color have asthma, and there's a correlation with those that have asthma in the areas where they live, and where they live, there's more pollution in the air, and the pollution is oftentimes can be directed right down to the energy we're using, right? So a lot of the work that I'm currently working on is in an effort that San Diego is in a great position and a posture to reclaim our energy, to have a community-owned utilities, not an investor-owned utilities. You know, so currently right now, SDG&E profits, not revenue, profits over $1 million a day. And so looking and knowing that we're in a posture now that we can have a community-owned utilities, that those revenues that are generated will go back into the city. So this is public policy, guys, but this is something that can help our communities. That those, you know, revenues can go right back into the city's, you know, general fund. Those funds could be used in our communities. The community-owned utilities can reinvest from a regenerative economy perspective. And those incomes can go into different nonprofit organizations doing the work that, you know, you guys are representing to do. So that's one aspect. Another opportunity that I have to work with is even in the Public Utilities Commission aspect. There's the company that I'm working with is also working on this on-bill financing energy. And so the price of having that is not necessarily attached to that person, but to the meter. So then the financing of that, so you can receive solar for your energy use. Even, you know, so we're working on that aspect too, so you can use that. And even if you move to another place, that solar is still there, and you can benefit from clean energy. You can, you know, benefit from a lower bill, and there's a way to finance it. And so right now we have the ears of some, you know, up in Sacramento that are willing to hear and figure out a solution so that everyone, regardless of where you live, what type of housing you live in, that you are able to benefit from things that can help benefit you, our communities, our families, our lives. So that's, you know, another aspect. Oh, but a very passionate thing I'm working on is urban greening. And so we have raised some money in our MOK function for trees. And Ms. Moss, I know I'm talking to you, and we're going to follow up on this, as well as Paul. Paul, you were there. So with this urban greening, we raised $1,000. And so we're wanting to, there's like this urban heat index that many of you guys are familiar with. And so we're wanting to plant these trees. So we have the money now, we have the donation for the trees, and we want these trees to be planted in city districts 4, 8, and 9 initially. So urban greenery and this tree planting project is something else I'm working on. Next week, there's a lot of opportunities in relationship to the topic I mentioned with the franchise and public power as being moving forward, that the city would take place. If you guys are willing to, you know, call in and give your voices at our city's environmental committee at 1 o'clock. Councilmember Sean Elo Rivera would definitely welcome these comments, and I would encourage you guys to do that. And we're also having a town hall on the 24th with Councilmember Monica Montgomery Stepp. I'm surprised Sister Maria didn't mention that. She's our moderator, with Councilmember Vivian Marina, Councilmember Sean Ela Rivera. And so that's on the 24th at 6 o'clock. And we welcome that our community members come and attend that as well. Thank you.
Wow, thank you all. That all seems like super promising and very uplifting. Like, I'm like, wow, how can I get involved like immediately, right?
Like, call me. I can give you a couple options.
Yeah, so like, yeah, I know that I'm not also gonna be the only one who's like interested. But I do want to just give comfortability to the panelists that we will have these events that you guys all suggested edited into like the live stream so people can go and see what they're going to look at, what you guys suggested. But yeah, thank you all for sharing. Thank you all for like being here and giving your opinions. Like, I know I really got a lot out of this. More so than just like knowing like what the next steps are to do, but just like existing in a community of like-minded people who are also Black. I think that there is like unspokenness around like, yeah, we may all be like fighting for environmental justice, but like fighting for environmental justice and within our own community, I feel like is something like kind of different. I feel very much connected to you all. I've only met you for like these like couple of hours. I know we way ran over time, but like I feel very much connected to you all because you all are a part of the Black experience. And I don't always get to connect with people in this line of work through that and through environmental justice in the same line. So it's like, yeah, thank you very much. I very much enjoyed being here. I very much enjoyed like hearing about like the food injustice, how we can educate people and mobilize our community for this, and this like, yeah, bridging racial justice and climate justice through all the things that you guys have mentioned. And yeah, I just like want to thank you all. I appreciate it. I very much enjoy that we have this space to kind of like think hopefully about like what Black people can do and the Black community can do at large to start engaging more, and not only in environmental work explicitly, but also like political work too, because that kind of like informs and like, yeah, plays out to like what we have power over. So I just wanted to like, thank you all, appreciate you all for being here. And then, yeah, we'll have a closing. And I just wanted to give you all a space to like say any closing remarks that you all would like, yeah, like to share.
Just thank you for having us. Thank you for putting this event together and thinking about us and understanding how representation matters and how we all, you know, need this kind of connection. It really helps to, you know, help us to amplify our voices, but it also helps us to keep up the good fight because we know we have each other's backs and we're going to be here for each other, and that we understand some of the barriers and challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis. So thank you for allowing us to be in this space and exercising all of your genius. We appreciate you.
Yeah, I was just wanted to say thank you again, yeah, for having us. And I'm super grateful to be able to, I said this in the chat, but I want to also voice it. I'm super grateful to be able to share this space with all of you. You guys are all amazing, amazing. Just even though I've only met you like a few hours ago, I could tell what incredible leaders you are. So yeah, and thank you, Lee, for your great host. Thank you for hosting this.
I just like to reiterate what everyone else is saying. Thank you so much for putting this together. it's really, really very encouraging to hear all of you, the work that you're doing, and it really makes me feel like we can do this, you know. And I really hope we all stay in touch and we can kind of support each other's work and ultimately use our creative ideas and things to figure out how to broaden it out and make even a broader impact. So thank you.
And I just want to say thank you. I always enjoy intergenerational interactions, but thank you particularly today on this day for this interaction with these folks. Good people. Thank you.
And again, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for the work of Sunrise Movement. You guys are making leaps and bounds. And so to put something together to recognize the work of us as Blacks that are, you know, in a space that is not very popular in some respects, I think is very meaningful. And I'm very grateful for this. And I'm grateful to share this space with each one of you guys and the work you guys do, and power to the people.
I just want to thank you for creating this space in general. It's always amazing being around Black people. Like I will continue to say that, especially Black people doing climate work. You're all amazing. And I hope that we can continue to meet just outside of this, outside of these spaces, even if it's just to just check in on each other, because I know we all need that time to just sit and heal. Yeah, so we all need that time to sit and heal. So yeah, I'm a very big, like, let's just chill for a little bit person. So if anyone ever wants to just sit, let me know. I would love to just sit and chat with any of you. You're all amazing. So thank you for having me in this space.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all. And I just want to thank you all, appreciate you all for being here. I love existing in a space full of Black people who are like-minded and just willing to just talk and do the work, because like oftentimes we're just too busy living life, trying to survive, to just exist and like live and talk. So I appreciate this. And yeah, so thank you. That concludes the end of this discussion. I very much appreciate you all. And you're more than welcome to like hop off the Zoom call. I know that like we're double the time, but also if you want to stay and like debrief a little bit, the call, that's okay.
It was really nice meeting you all, but I have to go.
It was very nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Leah. It was great.
Thank you,
Peace in everybody.
Yes. Wow. I don't know about everyone else, but that was really good for me. Honestly, kind of therapeutic watching this interview again has been really eye-opening. I hope that it was good for you all. And I just want to once again, thank our panelists, Sister Maria from Urban Sustainability Coalition, and I am Green, Sonja from Sun, Protect Our Communities and AACP, as well as Shukriya, who is a high school activist and has worked on climate youth strikes, and Diane Moss from Project New Village, Rachal Hamilton from CEAAL, and also SD 350. And also want to thank Paul Watson, who's from Global Action Research Center. So I hope you all are able to, go to their future events, support your local Black environmentalists, and also, want to thank our performer, Angel. Thank you so much for submitting a video. And my name is Leah. Thank you for watching our live stream as a part of Sunrise San Diego. We have our next general meeting this Sunday at 1 p.m. And I think the link will be available if you just, click. You can find us on Facebook, Sunrise San Diego, also on Instagram and Twitter. And please come to our next general meeting on Sunday at 1. We would love to see you, love to get you involved in our work, and have our power multiplied into the world. So thank you everyone for being involved. Also want to thank our interpreters. Very much appreciate all the work that you guys have done. and thank our audience for tuning in. Hope that you all have a good night.
The bit.ly for our upcoming meeting is in the chat, but I'll leave it in for 2 more minutes and then we will close the stream. Thank you very much.
If anybody would like to come off mute and say appreciations for anyone that was on here for today, that would also be nice. And we can just end on a bunch of appreciations.
I think Alex is, oh, yeah, all the attendees are gone, so we're chilling.
Nice.
There are
Wow.
no more attendees. It's just us.
Yeah.
How was that for you all?
For interpreting, right?
Yeah, I would love to hear how the interpreters felt, what it was like